thank you, and good morning, everyone, to be here all the way, and really appreciate your joining. And I'll just set the context for this discussion today. So, the EV landscape is evolving, and with the consistent improvements in battery technology, followed by changing consumer perceptions, and the reducing prices of EVs, there is an accelerated drive towards electrification across key mobility segments in India. And of this, the two-wheeler and the three-wheeler segments particularly are the low-hanging fruits. And led by a whole host of product options catering to various consumer needs as well as the price points. So, and also, the limited usage patterns of two-wheelers and three-wheelers also make them fit for electrification given the challenge of range that we have in battery electric vehicles. I think that is also one of the key enablers of electrification in these two categories in India. So, we are also seeing B2B applications of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, in last mile delivery, which is seeing an accelerated drive of electric vehicles in these different segments. Because, the TCO is the lowest, and that enables companies to eye more profitability and, achieve break even faster on the investments they've made on these vehicles. And in this class of vehicles, we've seen the maximum growth, inviting a flurry of new entrants into the market, a lot of new startups into the Indian automobile segment in the last few years. And among these startups, there's one common intent of solving the peculiar mobility problems faced in India by virtue of their unique business ideas as well as innovative designs. So, operating in a vast and dynamic market, however, is not that easy. I mean, India is a huge market, we all know, various challenges. And as the EV industry in the country evolves and the competition intensifies, particularly with the deep-rooted mainstream players also coming into the space eventually, staying profitable and even breaking even could be a tough task for younger companies, and who must balance new investments and scale and meet customer expectations as well to make a mark for their brands. So to discuss these challenges and opportunities, Autocar Professional and Autodesk, we have partnered to bring to you this conversation, InnerCircle, a CXO Roundtable, to accelerate your business with agility and flexibility. So thank you once again, and today me and my colleague, Mr. Ketan Thakkar, we are here to moderate this session. And I'll let Ketan please get the ball rolling, and we can start with
the segment has seen so much in the last 5 years. The good headlines, the challenging headlines, and a lot has happened in the ecosystem. So we would like to, dip into your experience of participating in this space and bring forth the prospects and challenges that the sector faces today. And we'd be happy to bring those issues out to the stakeholders out in the market, right from consumers to policymakers, so that we can have a constructive dialogue through which progressive steps can be taken for the future. I mean, we have, the stalwarts in the industry, while many in the startup space, but clearly there's conviction for transition to electric vehicles. That's the reason why we are here. And we'd be happy to, get your views about the industry and what are the steps that industry should take in order to ensure there's a sustainable growth in the future. There are many segments of the market. I'd like to start with first of the Amits. Amit from Yulu. Amit, you cater to a very unique segment, the gig economy, and a lot of talk about who the buyer is, where the scale will come from, how will the acceptance will be in the marketplace. 5 years you've been doing this. Share your experience about catering to the last mile mobility providers, and as your ambition is to move towards personal buyers, how have you seen the ecosystem evolve and the business dynamics change?
Lot of questions, but I'm very privileged and very proud that we are an early adopter of electric mobility in the country. I remember when Yulu started 2017, actually 18, when we launched with bicycle. We had a lot of inspiration coming from Europe, from China. Everyone was riding bicycle, and we thought maybe for India, last mile mobility is all about bicycles because that's a mascot for sustainable mobility anyway. But our assumption was not right. People were riding Yulu, but they were riding Yulu for health and fitness. So we will see a 5 a.m. ride, a 6 a.m. ride on Saturday and Sunday. So while we were making revenue, but it was not the revenue we wanted. And we did a hard look at the ground reality and like, okay, should we become a health tech company or should we remain focused to mobility? And Cult was doing an amazing job. He said, let Mukesh do Cult and let us focus on mobility. And the choices in front of us was not very easy. So we had, if you remember, some of you were part of Bangalore Circle. There were companies like Bounce, Vogo. What they did, they basically said, okay, bicycle engine not working. Yulu has proven that. They were doing scooters using TVS, a Scooty or Hero Honda, actually Honda Activa. And we were like, if you do petrol scooters, business model is not going to work. And we saw 2-3 issues, structural issues. And at the same time, electric mobility was not easy because there was no vehicle which we needed. So we didn't want a off-the-shelf product. Let's say Ampere was making one, Hero Electric was making one, but we were not convinced. And what we needed was a product which is so simple as bicycle, should not require driving license. I don't know how many of you know, but 85% people in India don't have driving license. In fact, they don't know how to ride a motorcycle or scooter. They will actually fall if you just give a scooter to a new person. And we are saying that, okay, we want to enable mobility for people, for the masses. Let's create something new. And then we found, and we were clear that we have to build it up from grounds up because there's nothing. We had a lot of challenges, at least from the intelligent people who said, oh, show me the trend line, nothing existing. And we're like, okay, give me this million money. And, but had tough time, very tough time. Went to Japan, chatting with Ranjita, they move very slow. And yes, Yamaha, Honda, everyone we spoke. They said, okay, come to me after 4-5 years. By then we will have a two-wheeler for you. I said, okay, by then we'll be dying. We'll be dead by then. Knocked doors at every OEM in India, and everyone is like, okay, I can make one for you, but you have to tell me the specification. And you also have to commit me a guarantee because I'm going to invest in my tooling costs and whatnot. I said, if I knew what I need, why will I come to you? So that was another deadlock. So that also did not work. And then, by the way, there was a silver line. I'll come to that in a moment. But then I actually went to China and then found an OEM who said, okay, what you need, I have something very similar. So we actually found one platform which could have been created, the first Yulu vehicle, what we did. So very super simple product, 35 kilogram weight, swappable battery, anyone can ride. It basically runs at as a low speed, 25 km per hour. So don't need driving license. Anyone who had done cycle in their life can get on Yulu and start being comfortable in 30 seconds. So that was a product promise. And with that, we launched the product. And the good part is in this whole journey, there was a parallel track with our meeting with Mr. Rajiv Bajaj at Bajaj Auto Limited, who was very inspired to hear what we are trying to do. While he had his own plans with Chetak, he said, okay, Amit, we can help you with this vehicle. And from day one, he has been part of our journey. So he's an investor, a well-wisher, and also a manufacturing and R&D partner now. So we launched that, and then problems started just converging to solutions. We stuck to the basic principles. We ended up building a battery pack, which works in India. We evolved on the battery, on the scooter side. So today we are now using 4th generation battery pack. So we are probably one of the most knowledgeable company and the team in the country, probably in the world, who understand micro mobility to the root. Operating challenges in India are humongous. The road condition, the Chinese OEM could not believe that the level of vibration. I was chatting with someone yesterday. They've created a new motor. I was saying that our magnets were falling away. And they were very surprised at how the hell we have been doing this for the last 10 years. We had issues with shock absorber, we had issues with motors, we had issues with chassis kind of failing. So all of those learnings went into, into the 2nd generation bike where we understood that's what all we have to do. Our first battery pack, water will seep in, and then we had a couple of thermal runaway issues. We realized that we had to over-invest in water, water safety. Now we are IP67. We do not have any issues related to any safety related to fire or any accident. So kind of build this up from grounds up. And the last thing which we have done, we saw that the need of swappable battery infrastructure in the country There was no one who was doing it. Sun Mobility was out there, but they had a bigger battery pack, and I did meet actually Chetan in the journey that, Chetan, why don't you do this? Somehow their product priorities and our product priorities, because we needed a small Chotu battery, did not converge. And then we ended up actually creating a new company called Yuma. So we, just like Bajaj, we also have partnership with a company called Magna. So Magna is actually an automobile component maker based out of North America. So they were very excited about India market, and they're like, okay, we have $1.5 billion we generate every year, and we are returning it to the shareholder. We said we can make a better use of that money. So with that intent, they came on our cap table. We also created a JV with them called Yuma. So Yuma does battery swapping. So currently Yulu is a partner, is a customer, you can say, but they are now signing up with other OEMs, going to cater to two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and they want to be an energy company. So we have actually a significant stake in that company. We generate demand for them, and in long term we create goodness. So there's a part of the business or the ecosystem which is going after very high efficiency, high speed premium products. So where the battery pack is fixed. So that's where I think likes of Log9 and likes of Magenta, I hear, but actually not Magenta. I'm mixing the name. So there are companies who are basically just trying to do on a fixed charging, and there are companies like Sun Mobility, Battery Smart, Yulu, who is figuring things out for the lower end of the spectrum by swappable battery. And B2B actually is a very good use case because they need a zero downtime product, and we provide that. So with a density of 2 kilometer, every charging station basically we are able to put, we actually give a swapping in less than 1 minute. So with that, the commercial users, especially the gig workers doing delivery or e-commerce stuff, they actually don't have to wait time just for charging purpose. So that's a product promise. So mobility as a service, battery as a service is what we are doing. And all of this got built over last 5 years. I'll pass it back to you and more details
and
later.
You finally managed to create value for your users.
Correct.
And a profitable case. Are we there?
Yes, so absolutely.
With the backing
so
of strong partners
not
like
only
Bajaj and
we actually did a lot of innovation on the product side, got an excellent product market fit, but more importantly, we actually are just hitting profitability next quarter. So we are literally at the knocking doors. So we are right there. Hopefully next quarter we announce our profitability at the EBITDA level. By the way, operationally we have been making money forever. Good news is all of this happened without taking even a single dollar of subsidy. So our product, unfortunately, was never qualified for the subsidy, which means we never had the clutch. So without subsidy on battery or on the scooter, we have built this profitable business model, solving for traffic, air pollution, livelihood, a lot of social impact. So very, very happy about that.
You started with the gig economy and last mile, and to the other extreme is Aura, catering to a very unique set of market, and where Rapti will also be entering the space. Help me understand your journey, Nandita. As to how has the evolution for you been, because you're catering to a specific niche. We were having that conversation before, and I'd like to get JP also into the conversation about, you were with Royal Enfield and you've come to a startup world, how the evolution has been. So first starting with you, tell me how's the journey been, and how was the inception stage, understanding consumer stage, the business metrics of it, and ensuring that you grow with time.
Yeah. So we are Autocar Energies. Our first product is called the Mantis. It's the flagship. The Mantis and all the products at Autocar Energies look at the 200 to 500 cc equivalent space. Right? And this is a space that's been growing in India year on year for the last 7-8 years. Started off at around 3% of the market by volume back in 2015-2016. Now is more than 8%, 8.5%.
Almost a million, yeah.
Yeah, and now when you're 8.5%, you're not really a niche anymore, right? This is a function of a very young, aspirational India, where there's a lot of disposable income. So we hire our customers. That's a criteria at Autocar Energies. You need to be a biker to come to Autocar Energies, because anybody can probably make an electric vehicle and probably put something together, but a motorcycle is something that comes out of passion. You need to love biking to build a motorcycle that's fun to ride. So for us, the evolution has been quite circuitous, not straightforward. We started off Orha because we wanted to build a bike that we wanted to ride, quite simply. And there was nothing, like Amit said, there was nothing, no product in the market that we could just buy. And coming back from Europe to India after say 10, 15 years, suddenly you see that how fast we're growing, and this breakneck speed is really not sustainable in any way. So my co-founder's a PhD, I'm the MBA, we're all bikers, and that's what makes the Mantis. So for us, we went through a slightly circuitous route. We started off making the motorcycle, we moved into aerospace and defense, and that's how we validated our tech stack. So we have a full stack of EV tech that's been proven on aerospace, unmanned aerial systems, defense systems. We build control systems, entire vehicles, one-ton vehicles for the defense. We do a lot of very crazy things over there, things that fly at 3,000 meters, things that go in the desert, and all that kind of stuff. But what that has helped us is to make our tech quite reliable, quite robust, and really quite tough. So we've done other things like take the bike and go on a world record ride, 13,500 kilometers with our pre-production prototypes, just to see what would happen. IP, for example, ingress protection. We went through slush in Northeast India when there were no roads for 150 kilometers. So been through all of that journey, now we are at launch. Finally, long journey, but finally at launch, and finally about to deliver in the next couple of months.
The passion project does need funds, right?
Passion project just needs funds, and passion projects need tech that's really, really solid. Because you cannot just, I think one thing that's proven time and again, and I'm sure all my colleagues here in the industry will agree, you cannot just remove an engine block and put a battery pack and make it an EV. It has to be engineered from the ground up, and that requires a whole different way of thinking. And at Orha, at least, we felt that a lot of transversal skills and cross-industry skills really help in thinking very fresh.
What gives you conviction that this 8% of premium motorcycle market will actually move towards an electric vehicle space, right? I mean, the big question that everyone keeps talking about is the acquisition price. And with the level of imports that we have and the regulation that is there, I mean, how do you ensure that, you are appealing to the riders at the same time making it accessible?
I think the best way, at least for a motorcycle consumer, so India market, largest two-wheeler market, 2/3 of the two-wheelers are motorcycles. Only 1/3 is scooters. And of these 2/3, that is the motorcycles, people are not going to move to electric unless and until you give them a product that's equal in performance to their existing vehicle. A scooter consumer in a city, in a big city, is going to be an early adopter in their head, right? A scooter, like, in a big city, he's probably going to be working in a startup or an IT company, something. He or she is very much exposed to other things. So he'll consider an EV more for the EV piece of it. A motorcycle person is using that motorcycle for a purpose. It has to serve that utility, whether it is leisure or sport or just functional, right? A motorcycle consumer is a very, very different
So how do you make it accessible for them?
You have to make it equal in performance to the best-in-class IC.
What about pricing? Because that's India's a price-sensitive market.
Pricing also. So we are keeping it as close to possible to a KTM Duke, for example, the Mantis, and the next products as we go, we'll keep it close to other IC engines.
That's quite an ambitious target.
Very ambitious. But what's the point of being a startup if you're not ambitious, right?
I'd like to understand the business case, but I'll leave it to investors. Sure. I'll leave it to investors. JP, let me bring you in. You understand the conventional business part of it. You were with Royal Enfield for years, and now you've joined Rapti. And help me understand the transition from wearing a legacy hat to a startup hat. It's a completely different world, and at the same time ensuring that, like what Ranjita mentioned, the product has to, make sense to the consumers. The acquisition price has to be accessible enough for the consumer to accept. So, help me understand your journey, and where do the common factors lie?
Yeah, actually, it was like when Ranjit was talking, it was like our cousin talking, reflecting almost the same philosophy and ideologies. Because like when you met Dinesh also, when Dinesh and team started this Rapti, the idea was when they wanted to come into motorcycle, they wanted to bring a motorcycle that gives a significantly better experience for the current IC motorcycles. So that actually called for a completely different technology approach. I mean, when it comes to scooters, when there were solutions available in the Asian countries, and scooters application is completely different. So therefore, it actually solved the Asian countries solutions solved in India. And that's why the penetration or adoption is also quite better when it comes to scooter. But for motorcycles, you can't just copy that approach. So therefore, it called for a completely different approach. And that's where actually we came up with the high voltage powertrain. But with that, we can solve a lot of these problems and offer a significantly better riding experience. Having said that, that also comes with its own challenges of complete vertical integration, because the ecosystem doesn't exist for this technology.
Absolutely.
So right from every small component to everything completely had to be internally designed and developed. That's why it took 4.5 years for Rapti also, because everything has been completely in-house designed and developed. So there's nothing that we can take just off the shelf except for some mechanical aspect, but otherwise whatever is meant for EV, it is all completely in-house developed.
How do you, JP, just curious, how do you appeal to a youth who's looking out for a Royal Enfield or a KTM, and you tell them that here's the EV, buy me, and also ensure that the pricing is accessible. So, you are addressing the same 1 million kind of buyers, or do you think the buyer is different? So how do you make it appealing and yet ensure that there's acceptance?
See, there are certain category drivers when it comes to, let's say, the mid-premium motorcycles. Like they are interested in the look of the bike, the performance, the style, and let's say the serviceability. So all these aspects, right? So I mean, there is a brand health study that covers all of this. So these are the category drivers for a 150cc plus. So as long as you are ticking all the or at least most of the boxes, then the chances are that you'll be able to make it. That's a overall answer, I would say. But when it comes to cost or the price, acquisition price, definitely it will be higher than the petrol powered vehicle. But at the same time, now that the battery costs are coming down, like you must have seen in car industry also. So it's a matter of time that, and in EVs, the battery pack is the largest cost component. So once that also comes down, over a period, you'll be able to make it in line with the ICE vehicles. But initially, you will have that challenge. But however, if you look at the total cost of ownership plus the kind of experience that you intend to give, I think that will justify, and it's
those are going to be the differentiators.
Yeah, and it's not going to be too much for the petrol customers to stretch. Right. And I mean, from that perspective, if you look at Royal Enfield also, when Royal Enfield started, let's say 15 years back, that space was a non-existent space.
Right.
It was literally created and gradually evolved, and today whatever that 8.5% is completely dominated by Royal Enfield. So companies can create that kind of a space and opportunity as long as you're able to build, you're able to provide the value and the brand.
So riding on India's aspiration in a way, moving from last mile mobility to performance bikes. Let's come to three-wheeler space. That's the space where TCO element has been cracked. I'd like to come to Nirmal, you first. You're part of Greaves, and in a way a unique setup because there's the legacy business of ICE as well. So it kind of supports you. Help me understand from a three-wheeler perspective. I think penetration levels are pretty high. What has been the experience so far? And and then I'll bring in the startups and try and understand from them as to how their journey has been.
Yeah, thank you, Ketan. So as far as three-wheelers are concerned, so I think she mentioned functionality a little earlier. I was actually thinking that I feel bikes are a lot more aspirational. Functionality really goes to the last mile mobility, three-wheeler kind of thing, right? It's really about functionality and TCO. Nothing else matters there. Like, hardly matters whether it looks good or not. Many times I don't claim all our vehicles will look good, but I think they work well. They work well for the customer. They make money for the customer. They actually earn their livelihood on a daily basis because of this. Because most of our customers really eventually are people from what we call the bottom of the pyramid. They actually are daily earning this money, and many of their EMIs are not paid on a monthly basis. Many times they are paid on a daily basis, right, in cash. That is the kind of customers that we actually are bringing out poverty, in my opinion. Many of them are, this is their livelihood, which is what I've got some of our dealers started off as a rickshaw driver, went on to become a broker, and is one of our biggest dealers at this point in time. That is the kind of change that you can bring in a society using possibly a three-wheeler, right? I don't claim to take credit for that, but I just mean to say that that is what can happen with a vehicle which earns livelihood. So in terms of electrification of the segment, I think what has happened is, I think somebody mentioned lowest hanging fruit, right? So essentially it is 50% of the three-wheelers already are electric because e-rickshaws are all electric, right? So and that's a large number, 50%, 50,000 vehicles being registered every month, and some of them, many of them not even registered, right? And you also have the other segment of L5 vehicles, out of which maybe close to 20% is already electric. And that is really because of the kind of economics that works in it. And one thing I've really realized, as you mentioned, right, is B2B is the starting point, but the real inflection point is a passenger vehicle that runs, right? Because B2B largely is for cargo. Cargo is still a 10 to 20% of the market. The 80% of the market is passenger movement. And you would have seen this over the last year and a half, that it just flipped completely. It started off as a largely cargo, largely B2B kind of a segment. Now, if you see that cargo is only maybe 25% and 75% is passenger, and with markets like UP, Bihar coming into the play, I think there is a huge opportunity out there. And in some of those cases, I mean, all these technologies that we talked about are so relevant, but in different pockets, these are very different, right? For example, I would love to have a vehicle which operates on swapping, but how do I do that in a Raebareli or let's say Amethi or any of these small places that we are working on, right? What I've realized is that there is a solution which is suitable to each market. You might not be able to cater to all the markets. You have to choose your own play and then go after that. So maybe some of these cases, for example, large cities, yes, swapping is the opportunity, fast charging is an opportunity. But in a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 town, maybe what you need is a slightly bigger battery, gives you the range that they require. And of course, you have to bring it at the right cost. I think without that, there is no play at all.
Right. Amit, help me understand. Alti Green did bet on this space and has got strong acceptance in the marketplace. What was the conviction? I mean, and how's the journey been so far? And as we progress to the next stage of evolution in the electrification of three-wheeler space, where do you think the inflection point will be? When do you actually start seeing, like Nirmal mentioned, that it's like a matter of just a short span of time, then the acceptance just grows. So, how's the journey been for you, and how do you see the the price gap and the inflection point? How far are we from that?
We are agnostic of number of wheels. 2, 3 is a point to start in. Naturally, you can add or delete so as to make a value proposition to the end customer. As she said, it is not necessarily a product which is aspirational, but it is a product which makes money. And therefore, our customer base is very, very different, as he rightfully said. They are running houses from this. It's an informal mode of transport which people really don't understand. If you look at the number of vehicles running in India, in 10 days, the three-wheelers transport, if you look at maths, 6 crore of about India's population, if you do the maths, because that's the number of people, if 1 crore vehicles are running, they run a day, and you do the maths, that's the kind of volume they are moving. Urban, rural, the population is about 70-30. While we concentrate on the urban part, but there's a mass amount of people who are living in the rural part also. So we are moving two things. We are moving man, we are moving material. What is the value proposition for the end customer? He makes more money at the end of the day. If he's making more money, naturally the acceptance is high. As he rightfully said, 20%. 20% is more to ensure there is enough visibility of the product. Now, how does the market dynamics change? So I think the concern here is not about acceptance of the product, because the product is in every form or shape equal or even better than the incumbents' ICE engines. So that is not the problem. The challenges are more ground driven in terms of availability of electricity, how do you do swapping, how do you make it more economical, with the subsidy going, does it really hit? For us, I really don't think it's going to hit. But at the end, if the TCO story drives home, they will turn around. There will be a dip, but it will start picking up again. Because at the end, the story is not on the subsidy, the story is on the economical benefit which the end customer gets. So if you look at all this in a complete nutshell, an ecosystem which really works for the people who are here, naturally battery charging, battery swapping, a product which really meets those requirements. When you combine and you start delivering it to the end customer, it becomes a product which is very difficult to ignore. Absolutely. And the fact that it has been able to penetrate faster than CNG, if you look at the numbers are much faster than CNG. So it's something which is going to happen, is already happening, and it's only a matter of time when you will stop seeing these ICE incumbents on the road. Many people are there. The market is massive. Everybody's got a share to really win over.
So the need is there, the acceptance is there. Transition is only a matter of time, probably sooner rather than later.
True.
Amit, let me bring you in. You wear the hat of strategy, planning, and marketing, and one of the cost element that everyone speaks about here is the swappable element in the electrification. Something that you guys have been pushing for. I mean, there's still dilly-dallying at the center level whether you should support battery swapping or no. But help me understand, when you see the transition and the for and against swapping, and just help us understand from a consumer standpoint. Does it really matter to them? It does not matter to them. When you kind of build your business further, what does really go into the planning hat?
So yeah, I mean, in fact, it's very heartening to see people use swapping and charging in the same line now. It's been a journey for people to consider swapping as something that's possible to do along with your traditional charging, right? So see, unlike so the way Sun Mobility solves for swapping is that we have our batteries, and that batteries is interoperable across all vehicle segments. So be it a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, auto, passenger, a loader or e-rickshaw, the same battery sort of goes, right? Now, what that helps us do is, of course, be able to get more out of the same asset. Also, for the ecosystem as a whole, we end up needing lesser resources to solve for the same amount of vehicle population there, right? Our estimate says that with just 60% of the resources that you would use otherwise for fixed battery vehicles, you are able to do swapping for the same amount, right? One is, of course, our batteries are well monitored. We are responsible for our batteries, so we are able to make sure that it runs more, there are more cycles. Also, since it's swappable batteries, you may not require a battery of that size, and with a smaller battery, you sort of
addresses the cost economics as well.
It works out, right? That's one. I also agree to what Nirmal was saying, right? For two-wheelers, three-wheelers, largely, the purchase is more transactional, right? Unlike bikes, so that's separate. But for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, it's more about cost economics. It's more transactional, right? And there, swapping makes a lot of sense. It may not make sense in a Raebareli, and we have to see how to get there. But for an urban cluster, for cities where the three-wheeler e-rickshaw density is high, swapping would make a lot more sense. than point charging. Also because of the nature of the people driving it, right? So they don't have space where they can go charge. They may not stay in the place where they're parking the vehicle. So what do they do, right? So in that case, all they need to do is go to a place, swap their batteries, and they're ready to go the next day. While the industry is coming into terms, and we realize that swapping has to be sort of at par, but the GST structure is not like that, right? So a vehicle without a battery gets an 18% GST, unlike that. Second, while the central government has this policy, which is yet to see, hopefully it comes soon, the implementation of that at a local level is a challenge, right? So some place like a Delhi, where the government has been aggressive and for the right reasons, you will see a lot of EV players there, right, including us. But if you go to Gurgaon, right, getting power is very tough.
Yeah.
Go to Noida, it's very tough. Even getting one, and as a charging player, you need power, you need space.
Absolutely.
Files keep rotating, and it takes a lot of time. So the government and everyone else needs to realize that it's not one solution. You need a host of solutions. You can push demand through subsidies, but unless people see enough charging points, be it swapping or point charge.
So swappable is actually an alternative without a subsidy, right? I mean, the acquisition cost becomes extremely accessible.
Yeah, its acquisition cost is 40% less upfront, right?
Right.
And today it's without subsidy, and in a way it acts as a subsidy for the customer because he pays 40% less.
Right.
But there is no subsidy coming in. But for if infrastructure, while there are all of these good initiatives that are announced, they are yet to see actual implementation happen on the ground. And once that happens, when people actually see, because seeing is when people will believe that this is happening, right? So when people start seeing, is when I think the entire industry gets a good push, and I think that's one element which still needs a lot of industry support.
So battery cost is something that is a heart and the biggest portion, right? So let me bring in Pankaj. Log9 has been working on this for so many years. We heard from JP about how battery costs are coming down. You also map your OE customer base and the end consumer base. Where are we in that journey? I mean, wherein we start seeing the inflection point, wherein the acquisition price, while swappable makes it a lot more accessible, but purely if it were to be fixed, how far are we in that journey wherein it really starts making sense from a lay consumer? Because how Nirmal mentioned, at the end of the day, consumer is what will kind of trigger the shift, significant shift. What's been your understanding so far with regards to how the battery cost element, the technology element, the implementation element?
Yeah, the forecast looks very promising for sure. If you look at it, to understand, will the batteries become cheaper? Yes, for sure. Will they become cheaper for us? That's a different question.
This depends on many dynamics.
Yeah, so I think battery is going cheap. There's no doubts about it. 10 years back, lithium-ion was $1,000 per kilowatt hour. Today, it's $100. That's a 10x reduction. Cattle recently talked about an LFP pricing, which is at about, let's say, possible at $50 per kilowatt hour. So we're talking about massive shifts that are happening. We didn't talk about the macros that are going to drive the pricing down. The question is that macro available to you and me? To understand that, let's look at why is it, why am I different than a North American buyer? Last year, globally, we produced something like 380, 400 gigawatt hour global production, massively 80% done in China. Cumulatively, all of us in this room and this entire country of 1.5 billion people, cumulatively, all of us bought 2 gigawatt hour, right? So you're 0.5% buyer of a global demand. When you're a drop in front of an ocean, would the ocean listen to you?
Absolutely.
Would you get the right thing? No. That's the struggle. That's the struggle because you're standing last in the queue of preference, of demand, of scale. And hence what you get is something that is very quasi, right? If you take a gigafactory and you look at their, map out their production and say, okay, fine, what is it that I'm buying? You should at least have a level of understanding is what is it that I'm buying? What is it that I'm getting against the money that I'm putting on the table, right? So if I do no two lithium-ion cells are same. That's the inherent nature of this of this thing. So, imagine that you're buying 1 million cells. And you try and understand how these cells look like to each other. What is the similarity between one cell and the other cell? And you plot it on the y-axis, you plot capacity, on the x-axis number of cells. You typically get a Gaussian curve like this. You have cells on this side, you have cells in the same batch, you can have two cells that can never look eye to eye. But if you pack them in a single battery pack, it's going to fail. So what you're trying to buy is not only a lithium-ion cell, what you're trying to buy is similar lithium-ion cells. You don't want to buy one from this batch, one from that batch. You don't want to buy grade B cell that came out at the start of this line when you started. You don't want to buy the cells that came out as the last. You want the meat of the thing. But Tesla goes ahead and puts you in a position where they buy 120 gigawatt hour. Right? So they get the meat of the thing, right? So when you go to the farmer's market, you should go 4 in the morning, right? We go typically 7 in the night. You get the rotten apples and all that stuff. So that's what I wanted to bring out. That.
So how do we get to a place where we have a seat on the table? We are in for a reckoning. How long is that journey going to be traversed, according to you?
I think we'll never be able to show up at 4 in the morning at the farmer's market, given where we are today.
What's needed, according to you?
Scale of demand, scale of purchase, OEMs that are massively, doing things at that scale. So what we need to do is solve it ourselves, solve it for ourselves. So and that's been the learning. That's one of the reasons a lot of people have asked us, why did Log9 go ahead and set up India's first lithium-ion cell manufacturing setup? I spent about couple of $1 million in one room. I could have taken all that room, taken a private jet, gone to China, bought all the cells that I need for next 10 years. Why did I do it here? Because I want to make it cheaper? No. When I will make it, it will be expensive. But when I make it, I will show up 4 a.m. in the office, in the lab. I will be able to create what I'm looking for. And what India needs is to create what it needs, rather than stand last in the queue and hope that they will get the kind of cells. So it kind of starts over there. So yes, the simple answer is global pricing will come down. Today we're looking at cells which are at $100. Tomorrow we will look at, and our prediction is, let's say, good 18 months. The scale that we're seeing, the supply chain, we're very much plugged into that universe of lithium ions. We see that the trend go down. We will probably, cattle cells or, an EV cell would be available at $75 to $60, may not be available to you and me. It is supply chain issues rather than pricing issues. It is quality issue rather than pricing issues. So what we tend to do is oversimplify that what will solve problem for us is if I can get a cheaper battery. No, you want the right battery.
Yeah.
Can I get the battery which is even 30% more expensive but can run 7 years? Can I avoid the second replacement cycle? Can I have a degradation proofing? Can I understand what are the assured cycle life that my cells will give me? So I think what I'm trying to submit to the table is that what lays in front of us is, while India is booting up on its EV journey, there is a technology step up that probably will happen in India. We're looking at a couple of gigafactories coming in India, for example.
Right. A
60, 70, 80 gigawatt hour production in India would solve a very large problem. If you're buying 2 gigawatt hour a year, if the Olas and the Amarajas and the Excites, they go ahead and set up 20, 30 gigawatt hour. I'll make the best battery, I'll give it to Greaves, I'll give it to Alti, I'll give it to best people. I think what we have to boot up is self-reliance, driven by indigenized technology for the use case that we have in India.
That's a long, hard road, isn't it?
No, it is not. Science is never hard. It requires policy, intention, and some bright people committing their life on that journey. We built cryogenic engine, didn't we? We didn't get it from the Russians, right? We built the softwares, nobody gave it to us. I think we are at the precipice of that. And given that, yes, some subsidies have gone away from the battery pack, but there's been a lot of movement on the PLI, for example.
Right.
So India is moving in the right direction. And I think and we will all try and do next 2-3 years, we will solve for what is now and here.
Absolutely.
But in the next 3 years, long-term visions will also get solved. That's the pivot point for us.
Right.
That we think.
Charging infrastructure, Mr. Mohan Raj, if I could bring you in, that's one of the key areas or key block in a consumer's mind about range anxiety, about, getting vehicles getting discharged. I mean, what opportunity did you see? And I mean, where are you in your journey when it comes to understanding the consumer, and as to do we have enough charging infrastructure is a big question a consumer asks. In your opinion, how critical is this bridge till the time we have self-reliant, and what about the opportunity once everything is quite efficient in future?
Yeah, we know that the future is electric, right? So there's a very big opportunity. Same like, when there is a cell phone, there the chargers always there. Okay, with chargers have a very big market. Not only it's only India. When I started, I thought about it's global thing. Okay, I can sell it to any country because it's just only power is the matter. Only 220 or 440 or something like. Future is very good, and right now actually the government move actually it varies from states to states.
Right.
It has to be centralized, mainly for charging infrastructure. Okay, the one rule has to in all over India like that. I see that there is a lot of difference in the pricings, and the demand varies from states to states.
That's an impediment.
Yes, I see Kerala, there is a big demand, and Karnataka is a very big demand, but whereas Tamil Nadu is like, even still you can say, you can count it, maybe 200 to 300 fast chargers are there, that's all. The whole Tamil Nadu state, right? Whereas in Delhi, they are going now in the third phase. First one is destroyed, second one, third one is going on now. So it varies from state to state. Gujarat is doing good, Maharashtra is doing good. And the infrastructure, even the big companies like IOCL and all the petroleum companies, for me, I'm thinking they're going a little bit wrong track. Their stations, actually, I don't know why do they fix all slow speed charges. Almost I see that the tenders and everything, they're floating. Therefore, the AC charges for slow speeds. Very few locations I see that fast charges. That too maximum 20 kilowatt or 30 kilowatt, something like. Right now, that most of the cars except Nexon, that the low range one, the very first models, rest all are 40 plus kilowatts. Okay. So they don't want to stay in a petrol pump or something long hours or without any facilities or something like that. So they have to consider right now that government has to give more subsidy on specific to the fast charges.
There has to be common standard, is what you're saying.
Common standard throughout
and that too at a central level rather than at the state level, to ensure that there's faster execution and implementation.
Yes.
Right.
So that will definitely improve that infrastructure growth very faster. And again, the price also right now, almost 50% components we are importing from China, right? And government has to promote a lot of R&Ds, local R&Ds, and to bring down the price. My company, actually, I did my own R&D for the last 5 years. We are completely 100% self-sustained, like software, embedded, power electronics, everything we do. I can say my brand is cheaper than rest of other brands.
Because it's localized.
Yeah, it's completely localized. And it's a very big market. Only thing is the central government has to take care about that whole thing, whole infrastructure development.
Right.
And incentives also, they have to be specific to fast charges.
Right. Mike, let me bring you in. Any questions?
So I'll take that. I'll bring SEG and Bob Warner into the picture here, since we're talking about localization and the EV ecosystem. I think components also is a critical part of that. So Tobias, according to you, we saw JP mentioned about doing everything in-house. So how are you seeing from a component to supplier perspective? How are you seeing the market evolve right now? What sort of challenges you?
Thank you. First of all, it's great that you still recognize us as a startup after 110 years. But light electric mobility is indeed 5 years young in SEG. So after the carve out from Bosch and being fully independent, we transferred all the decision-making processes to the regional entities. And so India is fully capable of taking decisions. And so 5 years ago, we started developing a 48-volt motor for a scooter. And some of our customers are here in the room, what we are very happy of. And I think the road that led us to this success is the great customer connect that we had during the past 30 years that we were in India, and the supplier base of more than 125 suppliers. So we are producing, last year we have produced close to 6 billion machines, rotating machines. Most of it's still starters and generators, but we have used the same supplier base of localized partners for the stacks, for the housings, for the copper, for the windings. And we have used our plans to localize the 48-volt machines, for example, that we use for the scooters and the three-wheelers. Only the magnets and the chips on the PCB are imported. The rest is, we can say, 97% made in India. And also for the 400-volt machines, just now where we are talking, the commissioning is coming to an end for the production line of 400-volt machines in Hosur, 40 kilometers from here, which is great, but also a challenge because, as you said, importing machines and components is maybe cheaper than doing it in India, but the localization factor is for us a very important driver in the discussion with the customer, and also our strategy, or the global strategy, also making things local for local.
Right. Dwarka, I'll come to you with that. I mean, do you believe that scale is still the biggest, challenge right now?
Yeah, no, again, thanks for the opportunity. So, scale, yes, it's one of the components to grow our business in India, for sure. But I think the enabler is also technology, right? And in what we're seeing is, I think as Jaipradeep mentioned, going to higher voltages and 400 volts, 800 volt systems. For BorgWarner, a lot of the focus is in passenger cars and commercial vehicle segments. And in terms of bringing the value creation to the customers, so we are seeing ourselves more than just components. It's more systems and solutions provider. So motors and power electronics is key to us. I heard a lot of talk on battery, but I want to at least make the point that traction machines and power electronics, I think, are one of those hidden gems in an electric propulsion that still garner a lot of innovation, a lot of technology development that happens. And I think those will enable not just the scale challenge, but also the cost challenge.
I'd like to bring Ranjita in here. Ranjita, I mean, in your earlier point, you mentioned that, you've been leveraging a lot of technology to develop your product. So if you could just shed light on some of these tools that you're leveraging.
It really helps. For us, the core principle at Aura Energies, at our engineering, is really first principles engineering. My CTO would be obsessed when we're running the endurance test every day of 500 kilometers, why his model and the actual on-road is not working together. So we are very, very simulations heavy. It's a tone at the top. Both my co-founder and my CTO come from a lot of simulations experience internationally and in India, in defense and aerospace and in automotive, things like that. So we do a lot of our validation through that. Other tech that we use a lot is 3D printing, metal 3D printing, plastic 3D printing. We prototype very fast. It might seem like we've been at motorcycles for a very long time, started in 2015 and now we're launching, but we've been through a lot of iterations purely just through first principles, and a lot of it is focused on getting this bike as light as possible. We're at 180 kgs. No motorcycle in the segment, India or internationally, is at 180 kgs. Right? Tomorrow, if I can do parametric design and make that commercially viable in manufacturing, I would do that. Right? For me, that's like, how can I get this as light, as strong, as reliable out there as possible in the most cost-effective way. So right now, our focus for the next 1 year is getting it cost-effective, whatever we're doing right now. So we're using stuff that we made through 3D printing, through really, really traditional casting methods. And making the stuff that we used to do through 3D printing in traditional casting methods, now that's been a mental, contortion that my team has really been up to for the last 1 year. And now the next level of mental contortion that they need to do is to make this cost effective.
And I believe you all said something very important. Technology is an enabler. And I believe what the conclusion is from most of the discussions is like speed and agility is important for that new market. You need to be faster than the competition, need to be differentiating, because at a certain point in time, they will come with this massive superpower of thousands of engineers and do similar things. Right? This is the time. You have a time ahead, as a head start, and that window will close at a certain point in time. And this means that, and this is what I'm interested in, to understand where you struggle, where you might want better tools or better technologies, or where we can help with our technologies to achieve that speed and agility, and where we get synergies from other industries or other manufacturing capabilities like 3D printing, and then transfer those components with a slight tweak into a die-casted part for mass production, if you want. And what we see here is that, and we invest in that a lot, it's automation, because automation reduces non-value-add tasks. It helps you to free up your resources for new things, for innovations. A lot of people talk about AI, artificial intelligence, but at the end, it's a means to an end. It doesn't invent something new. It helps you to get out of your experience better things and faster. Simulation, way of working for startups, for companies who want to be different, who can get rid of those constraints of a traditional 150-year-old process, which makes sense for an OEM who produces the same thing, just new model, but at the end of the day, a BMW, the next model is still a BMW, not a breakthrough, something entirely new. There's a lot of design changes, but yeah, they will come with this new class of BMWs, but in 2 years, in 3 years, that's ages, yeah? And this differentiating by being fast, being agile, this is what we want to deliver, and that's why I'm so keen to understand where you see the challenges. Like you mentioned, Fusion, it's our 3D printing, Fusion as a tool, which, and I don't want to talk about products here, which enables fast and agile way of working. Yeah? It doesn't do other things, yeah? But this is the purpose of that whole thing. And it's all, at the end of the day, to make sure that you move faster and deliver what your customer wants. Yeah? Either customer has a passion in riding a motorcycle, or the customer, it's about the business case. I don't care too much about how that thing looks and feels. It needs to earn my money at the end of the day. So everybody has a different purpose, and we are here to understand how can we help you to serve your customers better, to be faster and more agile.
So Amit, if I may come to you, Detlef just mentioned about AI, and I think you in your mobility as a service model, I think you're leveraging a lot of data. So if you could just shed some light on how you are, how data is enabling you to sort of optimize your business model, fine-tune your product, something on those lines.
Our primary usage of data and hence AI is at 2 levels. At a product level, we actually know pretty much what's happening with the bike. So level of vibrations, which component will fail and can fail. So we actually developing some IP over there, where rather than be reacting to a situation where something has gone wrong, we can proactively change that component. And also fed back into the product development cycle that this product is failing quite a lot, can you do something? So value engineering is one thing where you try to reduce the cost, but our whole business model is around TCO. So for us, as Pankaj was mentioning, that you are happy to pay more if we get better TCO. So that's how our approach has been. Good thing is everything is digitized. So the R&D team, the product management team, they understand that what exactly has to be done, what is the order of magnitude, and the decision of whether to pick this component versus that is very scientific, very mathematical. Actually, there is no emotion attached. Black and white, something is failing, not failing, etc. But the core part of a business, which is mobility as a service stack, actually we are heavy user of AI. Unlike Uber, where you click a button, the car comes to you. In our case, there's no driver. So entire business model runs on the fact that there is a vehicle sitting at the place where you actually going to need it the most. And we have also seen that if you are asking a user to walk more than 200 meters, the probability of that user taking a bike is 0. So after 100 meters, actually it falls like exponentially. So we have to make sure that not only there's a, we call YOLO zone, there's a YOLO zone out there at a metro, at your home, at your building or your office building. You also have to make sure that there's a bike out there at the time where you need. So there's algorithms which are basically doing supply and demand prediction. And on the basis of that, we basically do move bikes from a lower demand area to high demand area. And then you have also a constraint of cost, because this movement is not cheap. It's actually costs you money. Sometimes it's not even practical. So there is an objective function out there which tells us, or which gives us a control. You want to maximize the trip, you want to maximize the revenue or the margin. We are able to do that at a YOLO zone level. And that's how we basically have done our business. We have divided and ruled. So for us, there's never a city. It's all about a micro market, which typically is a pin code. And within the micro market, we have 100 sorts distribution places, which we call YOLO zone once again. And unlike business model in China or Europe, where the bikes can be, parked anywhere, which not only create a confusion in the mind of the consumer, citizens are very unhappy with you because they'll say, what is this clutter all over the place? And operationally, it is absolutely difficult. And moreover, there will be vandalism and things like that. So when we started the business, as I said, we took some playbook from China. Okay, leave it anywhere. And people were actually leaving it everywhere. We were finding our bikes on the tree, sometime in the lake. Many bikes in many people's home that you said, oh, park it anywhere. I parked at my home because I need it next day. So we took a very bold step of building this infrastructure for parking. And it was a Herculean task, unlike Paris, where the government said, okay, I'll make it for you. For us, it was not an easy way. We have to not make these places, but also make it like this. It's just like that you have one airport, but where do you go? Where do you land the plane? It's starting from Delhi. So you do need that infrastructure. But thanks to government, thanks to a lot of private support, real estate developers, everyone basically extended their help. So if I talk about Bangalore, we have 3,000 such YOLO zones, we call, at an average space of density of 300 meters. And we actually have an outstanding request to make close to 50,000 more YOLO zones. Good part is almost 98% of them are free, so we don't have to pay money. So this is a very unique case study of someone like us building an infrastructure in the public arena without spending money, and this is so useful.
Amit, even for Sun Mobility, is it working similarly? I mean, in terms of your planning of deputing these charging stations, and how do you manage concentration of these swapping solutions within a zone like Amit mentioned? So
we're close to you. We've done about 400 million kilometers now. We do about 1 million swaps a month at the current stage. But yeah, we get patterns of how people are driving, which locations are going. The only another facet there is we have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, auto, we have three-wheeler loaders, and we have e-rickshaws. So everyone seems to have a different pattern, right? And we sort of need to figure out which location will work for any of them. So we use a lot of GIS tools. We use a lot of our usage, data to find out, right? For example, if you take a three-wheeler, right? So if that particular person is servicing for Amazon, the route is more predictable. But what if he's on Porter, right? Then he could go from one point to the other point, and there's no saying where he'll go next. But for an e-rickshaw driver, he might just do the same route again and again. So it's very interesting to see, and also difficult in some sense to figure out what is the right location to do. Because we not only have to plan our stations, but also number of stations, right? So if a particular point is suitable for more segments, then all of them work together. One more thing that we do using data, since we're on that, right? So we make our own batteries, we make our own stations, and we make money off the batteries. So we don't make vehicles. The battery as an asset is the most important thing for us. So we're already on Industry 4.0 in some sense, right? So like Pankaj was saying, every cell is different. It's not like you can stack any and get the battery you want. So, and since most of the cells come from China, there's a lag. So it takes about 8-10 weeks until they land here. What if something has changed on the way? So our entire manufacturing line is controlled on the cloud. So all of this data is fed in right at the start. So we have different stages. So when the packing happens and the stacking happens, all of the data points are checked, and if there's any mismatch, it doesn't go to the next stage. It gets flagged off right away instead of it going right in the PDI and then us figuring out saying, hey, we have to go open it up and fix it again, right? So at every stage there are checks and balances. It's almost like there's a twin on the cloud that is sort of following you in the entire process, which also helps us in after sales. So once this battery is gone out, and then we see some error come in, so we also monitor about 140 data points, 150 data points every second on the battery. And if you find there's some error that's flashed or whatever, we can go back to the manufacturing and see, hey, what happened here? Is there something that got flagged here, which makes sense now?
You know, when one of your investors is Bajaj Auto, and Rajiv Bajaj says that any kind of support for EV will actually slow you down. So I'd like to get each individual's view here about the policy support that you think you need in what areas, and how long do you think that individual startups and companies can survive on their own, without any support from the government side. If I could begin with you, Amit, with swapping, you're actually reaching a scale, but at the same time, if something positive were to come on the policy front from the government side, it'll actually reduce the time, right? But yeah. I mean,
you want to
ask?
Okay.
Yeah, Amit, yeah.
Yeah. So I think one is having a level playing field, right? Irrespective of technology, as long as it's it serves the government's mission of lowering pollution, lowering import dollars. Having a level playing field, irrespective of what technology anyone has to sort of do, should be one way of how the government should.
So overriding goal should be CO2 and imports, right? I mean, that's the framework on which the policy should be made.
Yeah, the larger sort of societal good should be the main theme, instead of making it so specific, saying you do for a particular kilowatt hour, that range is it also constricts in some way of how. I mean, I understand from the policy, and they also want to sort of push for a particular type, but then if you really want innovation to happen, do not maybe constrict it to making it so specific that you also then don't allow a lot of innovation to happen. Maybe make it broad range and allow for startups like us to sort of figure out what's the right solution. The other one, I think, besides what Amit and Mohan said, is also the availability of power, right? While yes, there is space, there's PLI for you to set up stations. Power is a big problem in a lot of places. Even the way to get the power is like there's so many steps. The papers have to be okay. You need to get fire NOC. You need to get this. You need to get that. By the time you do it, it's already a few months, right? So some maybe single window or something of that sort to make sure that while yes, you're pushing on the demand side by getting more vehicle models out there, but also on the supply side, making sure that charging infra players are able to quickly also put this infra out there, is something that I think Delhi is a great model. DMRC DTL that he mentioned allows you to come and they take care of the power, right? So we're able to sort of do it in a week's time, in 15 days. But that may not be the case in most other states.
There are two ends of the spectrum. On one hand, government actually allocating humongous amount of FAME benefit. So it was actually a very welcoming thing. Otherwise, this demand would not have ignited. At the same time, if you look at the electric mobility success story in our country is e-rickshaw, where there was no incentive, there was no, so things were loosely controlled. And that's why people figured out the business model, it grew like crazy. And I agree with Amit on this part that if they play more of an enabler, don't be very tight about the rules and regulation, innovation will actually happen much faster. And innovation will drive economy of scale, better product experience, and sooner or later we'll figure out things. And I agree with Rajiv, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj on this element. If you try to be very prescriptive, then there will be only a couple of handful players who will actually get disproportionate advantage because of some reasons. But everyone else will not be able to innovate. And that's not good for the ecosystem like ours, where there's a absolutely blank canvas in terms of design, tech, use cases, what all we can do. is in front of us.
Tobias, from your perspective, how long are we? Because if the government support is not there, then you've got to push the boundaries on innovation and on technology.
Yeah. So what we are also doing in Europe, we are the largest manufacturer of mild hybrid e-drives, including the software and the inverter, and we are currently bringing this technology also towards system competency in India. And what we see in comparison to Europe and the US is that functional safety and cybersecurity does not play a role yet, which gives us a bit of a disadvantage compared to cheap Chinese imports. But my prediction is that as the market trend will further grow and we will see more and more vehicles and also incidents happening, that also the awareness will rise. And this will give then the companies who do a proper system engineering and safety management in the components, and not only innovating very fast, but also making the components reliable, robust, redundant, will give a headwind, but we are not there yet.
Dwarka, your view, how far are we wherein we can start getting solutions that are more accessible and...
No, I think we are there almost. I mean, pretty much there. In fact, like I was mentioning earlier, like some of the RFIs we're seeing from the local India OEMs, at least it's on par with some of the requirements we've seen with North America or European customers. I know Tobias mentioned about functional safety, cybersecurity. It's there. It's not like there is any shortcomings in terms of what the Indian end customer is looking for. From safety perspective, and OEMs are listening to them, and we are seeing that translate to our requirements. I think back to the question on the government incentives and subsidies, I think there's a balance there because manufacturing is key. And especially when I say manufacturing, it's also not just the land parcels, but it's also the power generation, right? And how do you help companies address or bridge those gaps? So I think there is room there for both government policies and multinationals like ourselves to work together.
Nirmal, your view, I mean, I think three-wheeler probably is the only space wherein the demand is there, the acceptance is there. I mean, doesn't matter FAME 2, FAME 3, FAME 5, right? I mean, you think, I mean, at this point in time, you think?
No, I've got a strong view. You quoted Rajiv Bajaj. Because he's from the industry. I want to quote somebody who's completely out of the industry, Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah.
For your benefit, Shah Rukh Khan is one of the India's superstars from Bollywood. Okay. So he says, people who say money is not important are the ones who are the richest, right?
Yeah.
So please take those comments with a pinch of salt that way.
Yeah.
See, whatever Pankaj mentioned, right? Talking about something that has to be built, somebody has to believe that battery will last for 7 years. You don't need to. So it is a cycle. It takes that much time for a person to understand that. For us to say that, okay, let's cut short all that and tomorrow onwards you have to just go and convince a customer. Why would that happen? It's a very hard road. And don't forget, Indian manufacturing industry had a permit raj for a really long time.
Right.
Why do you think Maruti Suzuki has this market share? It's because they had a license where others were not allowed to enter the industry. The government protected the industry till that happened. So I don't think it is a wrong thing to give subsidies. I actually think support is important for the industry to develop first. After that, obviously, you need a level playing ground, right? So when you have large players,
so it's needed for a definite period of time.
Yeah, and don't forget, e-rickshaws that we are talking about are largely lead acid batteries. Are you saying the lead acid battery is what we want as sustainable mobility? I don't agree. Right? You need a cleaner mobility. You need cleaner. When I say sustainable lithium-ion kind of batteries, I'm not saying that lithium-ion is the best option. Right? There'll be other batteries coming, other technologies coming in. How do you incubate them? How do you ensure that works in this industry? How do you give them enough time to scale? I think that is important. If the government is serious about making that happen, there has to be a continuous policy which doesn't change every 3 months.
Right.
That actually hurts the companies a lot more because you cannot plan anything. Right? So when Amit mentioned about going to China and getting that vehicle, right, 5 years back. So I actually, at that point in time, I was trying to get vehicles off the shelf and trying the same thing. Right? But it really takes that time for you to develop something.
Ranjita, what's your view?
So I agree on the points with respect to what needs to happen in terms of policy and maybe not necessarily overly prescriptive on the demand side and let it happen. I'd like to present a slightly different view because at Orha we come from very, very different industries and we're trying to make it in automotive. Two examples. One is outside of India, which is the DARPA in the US. One in India, which is BIRAC, which is for biotech. DARPA is for defense in the US and BIRAC is for biotech in India, right? What we need right now, and echoing what Pankaj also said, we need tech to happen in India. We need really, really core, like not business model work, like we need science work. I mean, not engineering. There's business model, there's engineering, there's science. So we need the science and engineering work to happen here for these cost benefits to actually come out here. BIRAC has been doing this fantastically in India. Crores and crores of grants that have come out, and because of that, there are a lot of, say, antibiotic resistant drugs for antibiotic resistant bacteria coming out in India now, which are ridiculously cost effective, right, compared to anything else in the world. But that wouldn't happen if those BIRAC grants weren't happening. Similarly, what DARPA does in the US and say Zero Motorcycles got a whole bunch of grants. I think their early stages, 2010s, they got 4 or 5 grants from the California government, which led them to develop their own motors, their own tech, their own powertrain, and delivering to 5 continents out of 1 factory in California. That needs to happen here. So rather than being extremely tight and prescriptive on a demand side, can we do something to really kick things and remove all the cobwebs?
So let's create the laboratory here.
Yeah, let's create that here, and let's let this bubble in whatever way it does, right? I mean, you can have LFP, you can have NMC, you can have NCA, LMFP, do all of that. Let's see what bubbles up in the end. Well, let's have swap, let's have fast charging, let's have slow charging. Let's see where that bubbles up and what business models evolve. It's a little bit something like the wild, wild west of e-rickshaws in Eastern UP, for example. Like that just bubbled up and you see fantastic business models there. When we went to, on the Bharatmala, when we went Assam, Bihar, UP, everything, the number of electric vehicles there is ridiculous. We didn't have to tell anybody that the Mantis is an electric bike, right? They knew it's an electric bike, and at Malda or at wherever they were, Gorakhpur, they were asking us, how long does it take to charge, right? How can you do the fast charging? And these are like cities like Malda, you don't even consider this a normal, top city. There is awareness of EVs where people are asking, I know this is an EV. Tell me how long it's going to take to charge. Tell me how long it's going to take. What's the range it's giving? How much is the efficiency? People are talking this language even in those cities. So I would say, let's talk about policy, but let's talk about policy to start stirring the cauldron a little bit. Let's start moving very, very early science to engineering kind of stage rather than a business model. I mean, that's valid, that's okay, that's good, that has changed things, but FAME has helped. I'm not saying it's not helped. FAME really has helped, but let's focus on core stuff so that we are actually making the tech here.
Yeah, Amit, what can make EVs mainstream?
Stir the cauldron.
So first thing, I think so. The government should be only prescriptive, not really controlling. Otherwise, innovation dies immediately.
Yes.
As regards policy, I 100% they are required. I'm not saying they're not required, but they're supposed to be inclusive. They're extremely exclusive policies, and the way they are structured, they are to more ways than one, resistant to a startup kind of a model. It's easier said than done, and as he said, prediction, there's just no prediction at all. You really don't know how to plan. Policy is good, you don't know what to do with your inventory when you start changing it. And then so your whole mind space shifts from innovation to just execution. So government certainly has to be there. There has to be education in terms of the government authorities to know what they are. EV architecture itself is unique. You're going to have new models. CMVR itself is outdated. You've got to look at CMVR and say, allow me to bring a product which is completely new. you got to break your head there just to explain it to them that this is possible. So I'm not saying policy is not required, I'm saying policy is required. You've got to look at it, you have a certain set of money, allocate it in a manner, as she said, maybe in tech, maybe for a product like ours, reduce the financial burden. The rate of interest which is charged on this, at least have that kind of a model. Allocate the money in some places where the end customer benefits. Don't stifle the process in a manner so that the whole innovation dies. And you are struggling just to survive. And you're not really having that mind space to do other things. You're just surviving, fame chala gaya. At least give enough information beforehand if that's going to happen. So money is there, allocate the money smartly. DARPA is a wonderful example. Let the technology get developed. Use what might you have to of the reach and the stretch to get it across.
Detlef, you had a point?
Yeah, just want to follow up on the localization, what you said, Ronitya. I believe, and you said it as well, India need to develop that technology from, I don't want to say from the scratch, from the ground up, because otherwise the business model is an interesting one, but then you're just relying on other countries to deliver stuff. And this is an experience, and we see this at the moment in Germany, how the OEMs didn't see coming the demand for smaller EV cars, four-wheelers. Now the market gets flooded by the cheap Chinese brands, and they're not bad, honestly. They build good cars in the meantime. That's the dangerous part. And if you don't have the capability to react fast and be in your country, in your region, and build the same stuff, the OEMs cannot do this because they did it a little bit here and a little bit there, but not all in. And I believe this is a chance you have. That is the localization I believe is needed here in India, and then the regulations need to be too restrictive.
Yeah, Pankaj, you've been doing all that what Ranjita has been speaking about, and you stayed the course. Now, you also have a very optimistic view about where things are maturing. In your view, mainstreaming of the space, and what role can the government play?
I think the government should do government's work, the business should do business work and not each other's work. And that's been one challenge that we've seen. I view the best sort of governance and governments are the ones that are very analogous to being a gardener, rather, not the florist. So when you want flower, you don't plant flower. You work in the fields, you prepare the soil, you provide the manure, you water it, you plant it. You give it the sunshine, you give it the environment, let the tree bloom. The flowers will happen and it will happen in abundance. If you want to build lithium ion, basics of lithium ion, cells and then batteries and everything and all the products will get made. The soil for lithium ion sits in mines. The soil for lithium ion sits in material science company that can take a lithium from a raw mine, convert it into the lithium carbonate. So what you need is something similar to what happened in India in 1970s and 80s. We were a poor country, we had about 500 million people that needed urgent medical help. We couldn't innovate drug molecules here. So we said, okay, fine. Let us produce the drug through a different process and we'll get the process patent on it. That's a TRIP agreement. And by today, we are like 60% of the world generic drugs are made in India. So India has done that in one industry very well. We've got the Ranbaxys and the Sun Pharmas and everybody came through it. So when India does a multi-decade investment in nurturing the ecosystem, a massive industry comes out of it. Same thing happened in IT. I presume same thing happened in electrification. And we've discovered some mines now. That's the time to put money, get IITs and ISCs clubbed together. Something similar to what the US did when they wanted to put a man on the moon. NASA did not put it. There are 4,000 other companies that work with NASA that put a man on the moon. So I leave this with that one single thought that there's a very famous saying in Africa. When the lion eats, the jungle eats.
Yeah, true.
Right? We need to produce that lion, and some of us are part of that lion. Right? That's what the government has to do.
All right, well said. JP, in your opinion, how can we mainstream the space, and how long can government keep supporting?
So, I think we have been getting good support in terms of, let's say, ARI, the approving body of automobiles. So they have given drafty grants at the initial stage for developing this high voltage technology. So that has been a great support for taking this forward, this technology. Second thing is the kind of support from the state government for the infrastructure and the plant setup and all of it. That will translate to roughly around 1.5 to 2% of the revenue the coming years. That's a significant kind of support. So from that side, actually the foundation support is quite good. But when it comes to, let's say, the demand side, of course, while we may not be eligible for the FAME support, but looking at the kind of aspiration government has, we all have for 2030 adoption. Right now, two-wheeler industry adoption is roughly around 4 to 5%. Right. From this level, I mean, for that kind of aspiration that we have, there has to be consistency in the support. Like FAME, every now and then there is a change or fluctuation. I think it's completely unpredictable for the OEMs and for the yeah, absolutely. There's no clarity when and how long is a question. When you have a huge aspiration for 2030, right now we are only at 4 to 5%. So there's a huge.
We're just about to launch, and the FAME comes to an end. I should ask you what happens in April, May. We don't know.
No, actually, I mean, we have planned in such a way that we don't have FAME in our So that's so. But I am talking about the industry per se. Actually, it's difficult, and in that 4 to 5% of the penetration also, it's completely scooters. So when it comes to motorcycle, which is like 70% of the industry, the penetration is in decimals. So from there, I mean, you have a lot more to do. So there, without these supports, it's going to be very difficult, and the consistency of the support. Second thing is there are supports from some of the state governments for the road tax, which is again 15 to 20% is the road tax from state to state. Right. There are some states 22% and some states 12 to 15%. That's again a big support from a demand side. That is again very short term. I mean, every government has like 1 year, 2 year kind of a window. Right. So you can't really plan things, your pricing or all that, no? You can't really plan.
So you want a long-term clarity on policy roadmap.
Correct.
That's essentially what we want.
Yeah, because our goals are long-term,
right.
Aspirations long-term, and the policies are all short-term, very
yeah. True that. Mr. Mohan? Yeah. In your view, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, that we want clarity from the government with regards to the road. I mean, getting availability of free land. But in your view, I mean, it's a very hard demand to have. What are your 2 or 3 expectations that you have that will help in ensuring that?
Yeah. Other than that land issue, the power, very few states have that enough power to immediately, disperse. For me, in Karnataka, it takes around a month's time for one fast chargers to install. The government takes that much time to. They say, okay, we don't have cable or power transformer, something like. Whereas in Kerala, they take around 2 months to just provide 20 kilowatt power. So how can we expect the fast charger will grow faster? So the government has to, the amount they allot for FAME 2 or something like that, the infrastructure development means not just installing only charger. The government has to spend money on that power distribution. Power distribution, enough production of power. At least they spend this much amount of millions to make a new power stations in every station. Because it's a new technology, the new energy eater. One power charger, fast charger takes around 3 square kilometers of house consumption. One charger will take, right? So just think about how much power that the government has to develop new energy stations, power production.
Yeah, that's another discussion. The DISCOM's profitability and their ability to power our grid and a grid stability, that'll take another half an hour. I think it has been an extremely engaging discussion. I just hope that all of you found it interesting. I really appreciate all of your time here.